I don't usually associate Christmas time with poop,
Oh,
but there have been 2 times that I can think of where I did.
okay.
When I was a teenager, one of my dad's coworkers wanted to do a nice thing for our family for Christmas. So they lived nearby, and about a day or two before Christmas, they stopped by and they gave us a large dessert called Baked Alaska. Do you know what
Okay.
Baked Alaska?
I don't know what it is, but I have heard of it.
Yeah. My understanding of it, this was 15 years ago, is that it is a sponge cake sort of thing, and inside of it there is this large core of ice cream. And the ice cream is very big and thick, kind of like a ball, and it needs to be very thick because you then bake that whole thing in the oven at a super hot temperature, and it kind of gets a little bit of like the burnt with the hot and the cold. It's a very interesting combination, I guess.
It sounds good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my family was very excited about this. And I guess I felt like with it being almost Christmas, there were so many other sweets in the house that I just decided I'll just have cookies or something. I don't know. I didn't care that much. And it turns out it was a good thing that I didn't, because everybody in my family who ate that then got diarrhea.
Ooh.
And then Christmas morning, everyone wakes up and they just feel like crap. And we had to like cancel going to my grandma's for Christmas that year. And that year went down in our family as the red and green plague.
The red and green plague.
Yes.
The poop year.
Yes, absolutely. So the second time that I associated Christmas with poop was maybe 6 or 7 years ago at this point, where I had to make a video with my friend Natalie, and she taught me about a holiday tradition called Tio de Nadal.
Okay.
In Spain, specifically in the Catalonia region, which is where Barcelona is, kind of the northeastern part of Spain, there is a tradition where the children in the family go outside and they look in the woods for a little cartoon log that has a face on it, and he wears this little special hat, and he is your Tio. And Tio de Nadal, when I heard that word, I'm not very good at Spanish, but I thought, does that mean Christmas uncle? And I thought, like, well, maybe I'm a Christmas uncle. Like, this is about me. And I guess the difference in the Catalan language, it's kind of like Spanish, but a little bit like French. It's a kind of a mishmash language, and Tio does not mean uncle in Catalan, but it actually means log. So it is the Christmas log.
Okay.
So you adopt your little Tio with his little face and his hat, and you bring him inside. And you have to feed him and kind of fatten him up over the Christmas season. So you have to take care of him. You put a little blanket on him. You give him food every day that he takes. And if you take very good care of your little Tio, he will poop out Christmas presents for you.
No way.
Specifically, a lot of chocolates.
It's appropriate.
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and he doesn't just give these out without a little bit of coaxing, though. So on Christmas Day, you have to sing the Tio song, the Tio de Nadal song, where you list your demands. You ask which kinds of foods you do and don't want. So you say, like, I want you to poop out nougats and almonds. I don't want any herrings. Herrings are too salty. And then you beat him with sticks until he provides. So when I heard this story, I thought, surely this is the only Catalan-related Christmas poop tradition, right? There are 2. I found a second one recently. It is about the caganer. And I'm trying to pronounce this well enough. It's spelled Caganer. Don't look into it too much. It may be mildly profane in certain countries. But the caganer is a little statue of a guy who he has his pants pulled down and he is pooping.
Oh.
And the goal is to hide him in your nativity scene. And I actually bought one.
Okay.
And I've got him right here. So
Oh, wow.
here's what he looks like.
It's there's his butt.
Yeah, so yeah, he's this is about like a 3-inch tall little statue, and he's wearing this is the same hat. He wears this little red hat
Okay.
that the Tio that you buy has as
Okay.
well. And I mean, I think the question you're probably asking is why.
Yeah, why? I'm wondering. Yes.
Yes. So
It is fun. I mean, it's funny.
absolutely. Yeah, he's a fun little guy. And there are a lot of reasons that people think that he exists. I guess I'll tell you how they use him these days.
Okay.
So like I said, the nativity scene. In American nativity scenes, you've got Mary, Joseph, Jesus, maybe a camel and a shepherd and a wise man. But in Spain, especially in Catalonia, they have these nativity scenes that are a full cityscape. So you have your mainstays like we talked about, but they also have buildings and villagers, and they all have like different jobs, and it's like a very large thing that you would put in your yard or the city puts downtown. And the goal of the Kagane is that you hide him in the scene somewhere. And whenever someone in that region sees a nativity scene, they always ask, "Where's the Kagane? Like, where's he at?" And the goal is to try to find him, just as like a fun little game. And these people take it so seriously. There is a whole industry of making custom little guys like this.
Really?
So so they actually, you can buy like celebrity versions. So there are shops where you can get Lionel Messi like was a very famous soccer player. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but he was very big in Spain for a long time in that area. So you can get your own little like Messi version of the Kagane, and
Where he's
people
pooping.
yes,
That's
and
funny.
so it's always people you like. Whereas I thought it was more of like a Calvin peeing situation where you want like Calvin the cartoon peas on something on Chevrolet or something, and you put that in the back of your car. So, it's like you put him up as a good luck charm. So like when he's playing soccer, I'm gonna put my little Kagane next to the TV, and I'm gonna hope he wins or whatever.
So it's not an insult. It's like a compliment to have one made of you.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. It is like a desirable thing to have that made. And there are also fan clubs. I found a website that has like they give out awards every year for like the best ones, and it has all these documented stories. And some people in Catalonia consider this to be like their best cultural export. When Barcelona held the Olympics 30 years ago, people said that should be in the logo. We need to have the little guy in the logo. But yeah, like the question of why that I've been dodging here, there are so many reasons why people think. Some people just say he's a good luck charm. But like I'm not satisfied with that. I think there's something deeper here. And I found a lot of people musing online about why the Kagane is so important, and some people think that it's a reminder of our flawed humanity in the face of God.
Okay.
That like it is this super deep metaphor that baby Jesus is here and he's perfect, and who am I? Like apparently the Kagane isn't even allowed to be close to Jesus. He has to be farther away in the scene, and that it's almost like humanity recognizing their shame. Like I'm in the face of baby Jesus, and I still have to worry about bodily functions. Like I'm not worthy. And then there are other people that say that basically he is helping with the harvest every year, that he is helping to give back to nature and fertilize, so that way he like your crops next year will grow. That he actually has like he's playing his role to help out for next year. And maybe that's where the good luck comes from. I don't know. I read like this article from an art teacher in America who I think went to Spain and learned about all this, and he says his students have learned a lot about injecting humor into serious topics, and that he's actually teaching them that you can have this goofy little thing, but it also, be important and talk about something that is very not serious. So I guess I want to challenge everybody at home that either this Christmas, if you're heading out here soon, or next Christmas, take a look at your friend's nativity scene and just ask, "Where's the Kagane?"
Welcome to the Factoid Podcast. You didn't ask for it, but we're going to tell you anyway. My name's Chris Humphreys.
And I'm Payton Gessel.
Now, Payton, we knew that this episode was going to come out on Christmas for months and months now. Actually, I probably wouldn't have put it together, but you told me because you plan more than I do, and you knew like a long time ago, hey, this is going to come out on Christmas, which I think is great.
Thanks.
So, Merry Christmas, everyone.
Yes.
But I've been thinking about, what am I going to talk about in a Christmas episode? Because I could just talk about whatever and it would just be on Christmas, but I thought it would be more appropriate if I talked about something that was Christmassy, right? So, and searching, and I looked at all these Christmas adjacent things and Christmas characters and whatever, and I didn't really know what to talk about because it's all just things I'm sure we've heard. But there's a Christmas tradition I learned about that I'd never heard of before, and you just told us about one. Very funny. This isn't quite as funny. Have you ever heard of a Christmas hamper?
No.
Okay, so here's the thing. I saw the word hamper, and in my mind, I immediately go, So like it's like a stocking but bigger. Is that what it is? Because a hamper in my mind, like you put laundry in it.
Yes,
right.
that
Like
was the word we used as kids, and I never know, like, is that a regional thing?
I don't know either. That's what I called it as well. I had a laundry hamper. And so that's what my mind is at, right? And I'm thinking, like, is this just for people who, like, want to put more things? I don't understand.
It's Santa's little, like, his bag he carries over his shoulder.
Exactly. Like, in college, I had, like, a dirty laundry hamper that, like, was a huge bag I'd put on my shoulder,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so I'm just thinking, like, well, you know, we put stockings. That's a tradition I've always done, and we still do with my family today. But, like, what is a Christmas hamper? Well, it turns out that's not what it is at all. It's actually, it got popular in the Victorian era. And what it is basically like it started out with rich folks would just put like foods and drinks and snacks and candies and like all this into this big gift package and give it to people, generally like people on their staff, like maybe who cleaned their house, or like poor people less fortunate than them, right? I didn't, there's no specific vessel, right? It's just big, It's a big basket that has all this stuff in it, right? And it has like these traditional things in it. And one of the traditional things that it has in it was something that I began to think more about. One of the things that's almost always in a Christmas hamper is a fruitcake.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a fruitcake?
I made a fruitcake in grade school.
Okay.
I watched one of my Christmas family traditions, especially with Jacoby, my sister, and I, is that we like to watch the Animaniacs Christmas special.
Okay.
And we've actually got it like digitized. It was on like a VHS for a long time. So we've got like a digital version that we keep. And one of the skits in the Animaniacs Christmas special involves fruitcake. And it's kind of a retelling of A Christmas Carol, basically, but in like one of the things I really love about this special is that there's a lot of video production humor in it. For it being a kids show, there's a lot of jokes about Hollywood lots and production studios and things like that. So I think he's the CEO of Warner Brothers, and he has this conversion over time. But frequently he gets mad that all of his assistants will buy him fruitcakes, and they looked like comical fruit colors and things like that. So I would watch this as a kid, and one of the days that like I got the idea, well, everyone says fruitcake is bad in this, but maybe we should make one. And my mom like helped me make a fruitcake, and it was okay.
Right.
It was not terrible.
Okay.
But I would say it was not the most flavorful thing because I think we were trying to be, we didn't want to overdo it with the fruit. It was mostly cake.
So here's the thing. Fruitcakes, like you're talking about it, it's been a thing. It's in the Animaniacs Christmas special. It's like been a Christmas thing for as long as I can remember. And many years before. I've never had a fruitcake. I've heard about them, and it's like in that movie. Same thing with now. Like it's kind of a joke. It's kind of a meme at this point. Like fruitcakes are like you don't want one.
Yeah.
And in fact, my dad even says this is funny. My dad has always said the term. About someone who's like crazy, he said they're nuttier than a fruitcake. Like that's like what he said, right? And actually, we were at our friend's house just like last week. We were at our friend's house and we were talking about an experience they had with some people, and they're like, "Dude, they're straight. They're a straight fruitcake." Like that's and it's like it's a negative thing, right?
Yeah.
A fruitcake's not a good thing. But I'd never had one. I've still never had one, except I brought one with me today.
Yeah.
So Payton, we can partake in this today. It's not a good one. It's not like a high quality one. Here. Let me, if you can hear this, wrapped in cellophane. I got it at Walmart. It was $4. Okay. But I wanted us to try it because I've never tried one. I really have no idea what to expect. I'm not that excited. It does not look very good. It looks like a piece of heavy bread. Feel this. With
that's a dense boy.
With like gummies, and not gummies, gumdrops in it. That's what it kind of looks like.
Oh wow! I turned it to the side and I get a little cross section of this, and it's
not a whole loaf.
It's very busy inside.
Very busy. So if we want to open this up, we can like maybe rip off a piece and just try it. But it turns out there's a lot to fruitcakes, and so I figured I would have to, in order to talk about them more, I would have to try one.
Sure.
Go for a rip.
That is.
Take a rip. It's dense. I honestly don't want to take a bite. I'm scared.
I just smelled it and I am unsure. I will do it. I will do it for you, but
it does not smell good. Like it does not smell good. Just so we're aware, fruitcake, one of the most common ingredients in fruitcake is alcohol. This does not have alcohol in it.
Yeah, I feel like we used some sort of extract when I made it as a kid.
Okay, here we go.
I don't like this one bit.
Oh, it's really bad. Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, like what even is it? I basically have to take this like a pill. Like I gotta swallow it.
I just did too.
Thank you for at least indulging in that fruitcake with me today.
Oh, sure.
I think it makes the experience a little better. And now we can have, kind of where we're coming from.
Yeah,
with it.
misery breeds
Right.
company. Is that what the line is?
Yeah, for sure. Here's the thing. I think that throughout the years, fruitcakes have gone from this status of like this really great thing that people look forward to and love to this thing that is like literally a joke, right? And I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about fruitcakes and about the Christmas tradition. Why are they a Christmas tradition? It's not very Christmassy, other than maybe it's got green and red stuff in it.
Sure.
Just to explain it to you guys who can't see, it's literally got green bits and red bits and some other colored bits in there. So what are the origins? Well, it turns out they're like old. Like it goes way back. This turns out to be one of the like earliest forms of like I don't even know, whatever you might want to call this, right? It actually goes back to like over 1,000 years ago. There's recipes found, and this was basically an MRE for Roman soldiers.
Oh.
Yeah, like they would take it with them onto the battlefield, like in 900 AD, like there's recipes with, basically it's like alcohol and flour and bits of stuff, right? And it's because it's dense, and something about a fruitcake that's interesting is it lasts for like a very long time. Like this doesn't expire until June.
Oh, yeah.
And this is like one that's been made and like wrapped. Like it's not even one that's made for shelf life, and it lasts that long, right? So it lasts a long time. It has a lot of calories. It's very dense. So it makes sense to be something that like someone who needs to go places or do a lot of things would eat, I guess, and you want to be able to travel with it and not get sick from eating it. So that's why they did it. But that's kind of where it started. But where we are now, the kind of fruitcake we have now, different. Not the same thing as that, right? But so what we have now kind of got popular in the 1600s. In Europe, very soon before that, they started importing like fruits from the Mediterranean in. So they had all these kind of fruits, and they didn't really know what to do with them. And so they had all these super sweet fruits, and they decided we got to figure out how to use these fruits. So the fruitcake was kind of the answer to the problem. Like, I don't call it a problem, but this new thing, right? Oh, we have all these fruits. And it turns out if you like boil them down and you like prepare them a certain way, they can last a long time. It makes their colors really like bright and pretty, and it makes them last a long time. So there's a bunch of sugar, a bunch of flour, a bunch of alcohol, and a bunch of fruit. And this is what you get. This is how fruitcakes have gotten popular. So the 1600s, sugar got cheap. They got fruit that got cheap. And so this is basically just kind of it created itself, because why wouldn't it?
Right. This is a problem I ran into in my garden where I didn't have too many fruits. But I mean, I definitely, when you have a surprisingly big crop of a certain type of plant, you run into the problem of like, how do I use this before it goes bad? And that's where you run into situations where, like with my peppers, that if I had been more on top of things this year, I would have dehydrated them all and things like that.
Right.
But what I would run into on the weekends is like, I would say, oh man, I have a bunch of really hot peppers. How am I going to make something that doesn't kill me, but also uses them before they all go bad? So this is like, I can see how this has been a problem throughout history.
Yeah, and it makes sense. And this is slightly off topic, but I have for some reason gotten into this like Facebook rabbit hole where it shows me suggested posts from like canning groups all the time, and it'll be like, hey, I canned 46 quarts of whatever today, and like it's crazy because it's people with huge gardens, like you said, and you got a bunch of produce, and you have to figure out, well, if I can't eat it, if I can't freeze it, I've got to do something with it. Otherwise, there's no reason to have this huge garden. So they can it, right? And then people literally have pantries that are as big as my living room filled with canned foods. And it's like, it's just this thing that it's like a perpetuating thing, right? Yeah. And so I feel like that's where this started. They have all these new things. They don't know what to do with it. They don't want it to go bad. They want to use it. And so they created this. And while we ate it and think, man, that's really bad, I have to keep in the context of like, well, they didn't have like Hershey bars and Reese's candy. You know what I mean? So like this was like probably something special.
Yeah.
It's sweet. And if I'd never had a candy before, that would be wonderful. Yeah. I bet Wade would like that.
I was about to say, yeah.
I bet he would like it. Maybe he'll try some. I don't know. Wade's my baby. I bet he would like it. But it was still an important thing back then. And so this is in the 1600s. It wasn't for about another 100 years that they started adding nuts to it, because that became another very common ingredient. I don't think that one has nuts in it. Maybe it does. And they're just soggy. I don't know.
I do not know.
Yeah, I'm not going to try it again to figure out.
Nope.
But I think nuts are a big thing. And I think that, my dad's joke, nuttier than a fruitcake, it's a very common to have just lots of nuts. Lots of nuts, yes. Lots of fruits. It's basically like a banana bread, but with just like everything, right?
Sure.
All kinds of fruits.
I remember there being, I think in the fruitcake we made when I was a kid, I think we put more nut than fruit in it. And I think that helped it turn out a little bit better.
Yes. And I can understand that now having this. But so 100 years later, the nuts started coming into the picture. And this is also kind of what changed fruitcakes a little bit, is because this is when they first kind of began farming and harvesting nuts, right? And so one of the first traditions surrounding fruitcakes was in the 1700s, they would grow nuts and they would farm them. And as soon as they harvested them, they would like celebrate the bountiful nut harvest by creating a fruitcake with those nuts. And then get this, because of how a fruitcake works, because it lasts a long time and everything, they would store that fruitcake away until the next planting season of the nuts, and they would experience the joy of eating this fruitcake before they went out and did the hard work planting the nuts in the fields.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, we're at the point now where fruitcakes are becoming common. People are making them a lot. There's fruits, there's sugar. It's all very plentiful. It lasts a long time, like a really long time. Like, have you ever lost a McDonald's French fry in your car before?
Sure.
And then found it in like a month or 2 months or 3
Yes.
months later, and it still looks exactly the same?
Absolutely.
That's what this is. Like, it doesn't mold. Like,
Yeah.
nothing happens to it,
Yeah.
right?
The,
And so
the
that's
Twinkie of the
Yes.
Middle Ages.
it's this thing that doesn't ever go bad, right? And so like that's why that's the reason for the whole nut harvest thing. They can eat it in 6 months or whatever, and it's still fine. Well, all of that's because of the amount of sugar in it, right? Because sugar is kind of a natural preservative.
Mhm.
Well, they kind of catch on to this eventually, and they realize this has a lot of sugar in it. I don't know. Is this something we should really be eating as often as we're eating it? Should it be kind of, what should we do about it? There's a lot of sugar in this thing. And so, actually, in the 1800s, the entirety of Europe decided these things are outlawed. Fruitcakes, not allowed anymore. And the actual quote is they are sinfully rich. Okay? So, like,
Wow.
literally, like, there was a period of time where in all of Europe, you were not allowed to have a fruitcake because it was just too sweet, too rich.
Yeah, I'm imagining some police officer knocking on your door and saying, like, I smell it in there.
I can see that fruitcake. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy. But, again, the same problem exists. We have all this fruit. We import all this fruit. We want to use it all, but we actually can't even use it all because, as far as I understand, like, once a fruit passes, like when a banana gets brown, you put it in banana bread.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, it's the same kind of thing. Like, when I can't eat this fruit anymore, when I can't have it fresh, when I can't put it in a pie, I can still make fruitcake out of it,
Of
right?
course.
And so, like, we have all this waste now that didn't exist. So eventually, Europe kind of lightened up and they said, look, we can start using it on special occasions. We can have this fruitcake for, for holidays, right? We can have
Okay.
it for birthdays, retirement parties, whatever, right? And so that's kind of the biggest understanding of why do we eat fruitcakes on Christmas? Why is it a Christmas? It's because for a while it was only allowed on Christmas. And then for some reason we decided it was important enough and we should eat them on Christmas. And I've now learned I'm not going to be eating it on Christmas.
No.
Maybe if I made one it'd be better, but I was considering making one for this, but then I looked into like all the different, it's like, I'm just going to buy one.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it was $4. And while it's been popular for literally centuries, like over 1,000 years, the fruitcake has been popular. As we talked about, it's kind of become a joke. It's become a meme. It's become a like, oh, I'll get him a fruitcake, or oh, he's a fruitcake.
Right. I
Right.
think in that Christmas special, I think they were used as projectile weapons. There were times where like someone would just chuck a fruitcake at somebody and they'd like catch the whole thing in their mouth.
Yes.
Yeah. Like it was,
Oh,
yeah.
And they're dense, so I can see it. It would hurt.
Yeah.
It would actually hurt if I threw this at you. Like I could be like, huh, that does more damage than you would think it would. Well, it can actually be traced, and people started. There's like surveys that have been taken where like over the last 50 years where people are like, what's the least favorite gift you can receive, and a fruitcake's one of them. And like as it got newer and newer, and as the postal service was invented, fruitcakes became this mail-in item. You could like order one because
Okay.
again, for the same reasons, it's easy to mail. You can buy one, so like new businesses arose and all this. So people started getting them for gifts, and they'd get so many of them for gifts. It's like, what am I supposed to do with all these fruitcakes? I don't even. So people started hating getting them. So it's like, well, now it's like this new thing. I don't want fruitcakes. Fruitcakes are bad. And so that actually kind of turned into a joke in itself. And the earliest like pop culture reference is probably in the 80s on The Tonight Show. I guess maybe the most popular one. In The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson said this joke. He said, the worst gift you can get is a fruitcake. There's only one fruitcake in the entire world, and people keep sending it to each other. And I guess it was funny. I mean, it is funny, because I guess you sent them through the mail, right? That was
Right.
really popular at the time. That joke slayed the audience. I wrote that down because I wanted to say Slade, ho ho ho. But their long-lasting nature became a joke, and it was popular enough joke that made everyone laugh in the Tonight Show in the '80s. But get this, I found this one story that I want to share with you before we're done with this. Is the long-lasting, never go bad nature of this fruitcake became a joke for these two ladies in New York, right? It started in the 50s. Good friends. They both lived in apartments, different floors of the same house, right? So they had a landlord, and he was kind of known to be a cheap guy. And so the landlord gave one of these ladies a fruitcake for Christmas. And she was like, oh, wow, thank you so much for this gift. And then when the door shut, it's like, dude, come on, right? And so she was telling her friend who lives upstairs about this, and they kind of made a joke about like, oh, what are you going to do with that? So as a joke, she sent that fruitcake to her friend for Christmas.
I see where this is going.
And, well, you know, it kind of perpetuates. They're still friends. The next year, she receives the fruitcake back in the mail for her Christmas, right? And so for years, this is in the 50s, for years and years and years, this perpetuates. And like, they've moved multiple times. One lives in Florida. Still, they're passing back and forth this fruitcake 50 years later. And guess what? You could still eat it now. Like, you could actually still eat it.
It belongs in a museum,
It actually belongs in a museum. And this isn't even the oldest example. Like, from what I read, there's one that was found in, like, Antarctica that's from, like, 150 years ago or something. And it's still, like, the quote of the person who found it was, like, it still doesn't look too bad. And so it's just, like, it's just crazy. And as far as I'm aware, our preservative game in America has only gotten stronger, right? So this is just the original, kind of the OG natural way to preserve stuff. I bought this one, like I said. It says it's good till summer 2024. I'm considering just kind of socking this away till next year's Christmas episode.
Sure.
And we can have another time eating it. I don't know if that's a good idea. But if you're down, I'm down.
The fun part about doing an episode on Christmas with you is that we just get to imagine our listeners just in their onesie pajamas sitting around the fire saying like, tell me another story about the Christmas poo, Papa. And it did get me thinking, do you think our audience is like a Netflix fireplace kind of people, or do you think they have real fireplaces?
I think that I don't have a real fireplace.
Yeah.
I feel like Netflix fireplace.
Yeah. And I've been really partial towards YouTube fireplaces. There's a lot more options where I feel like with Netflix, you have kind of your basic, this is a fireplace, but then you get all of these themed ones. So if you want a Christmas fireplace, if you want a Christmas jazz fireplace, and they all run 8 hours, and they add in the file name, they say like no ads and all this stuff.
I've actually, now that you're saying this, I've turned on plenty of YouTube fireplaces this year already.
Yeah. It's very fun. I'd now like to just play a little song for you, Chris. It was actually hidden inside of our Christmas theme. And I had Amy adjust the levels a little bit just so you can hear it better.
I know that one.
Yeah, and I mean, as we know, though, we all know the lyrics to this song.
Yeah.
Jingle bells, Batman smells, Robin laid an egg.
Yeah.
Batmobile lost a wheel, and the Joker got away.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you remember the first time you heard that song?
With those lyrics?
Yes.
It was probably, it had to be kindergarten or first grade. Like very early school.
Yes.
I remember like singing, I remember someone singing that and being like, what'd they say? And being like, huh. And then you learn it right away, obviously.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was around kindergarten or first grade for me as well. And it kind of got me wondering, like, where did this come from? Because, like, it wasn't ever really in like a Batman movie. And I feel like I did eventually, as I got older, I would see this in commercials on the WB, and they would have like Joker singing Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. But like, that's not the origins of this. And I just always assumed that like, this is a thing that has always existed on the playground, and you just never know where it came from. Until today. And I did a very deep dive into Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. And I want to start off, though, by going into the original source material.
Okay.
Jingle Bells. So there are a few sources of inspiration for this song, and they all take the magic of Christmas out of it. So James Pierpont is the man who is credited with coming up with the song in the 1850s. And he lived most of his life in Savannah, Georgia, but he grew up in Massachusetts area. And occasionally he would go back and visit his hometown in Massachusetts. And one of the things that he would be witnessing whenever he would go back to Massachusetts was drag races on horses. And if you read the lyrics on all the different verses in Jingle Bells, it starts to become very apparent that he is painting a picture of these horse drag races. And the original title of the song was called One Horse Open Sleigh.
Ah, that
So
makes
it was
sense.
even more about, the horses. So you learn a lot about sleigh racing culture if you start to read into it, where you have one horse on the sleigh, obviously. You have your girl in the sleigh with you.
Mhm.
Sometimes alcohol is involved, from what I can tell, and you are racing down straight snowy streets in Medford, Massachusetts. And apparently, all the bars really get into this. This was a great opportunity to bet on races.
Sure.
So they would be betting on the races, and they could look out the window and see everybody going by. And it started becoming kind of like a drinking song. And that is where like Jingle Bells really started to become popular.
Ho, ho, jingle. But I can picture that,
Exactly.
slamming the beer stein on the table and
Oh,
everything.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the funniest part about the bells in particular is that when you have a horse pulling a sleigh and the roads are all snowy and icy, it's a lot harder to hear the horse coming. So you had to put jingle bells. You had to put the bells on your sleigh so that you could hear the bells jingling, and you'd know, oh, they're drag racing outside. I don't want to get hit. So
Mm.
Jingle Bells was a legal requirement. In the same way that when you drive an electric car and
They have to have the noise.
Yes, exactly. So imagine like a version of Jingle Bells that just has like like the semi beeping noise backing up or something as the percussion. And that's what we ended up with.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
It's losing. You're right. It's losing all magic of Christmas in my mind right now.
Yeah, well, wait till I tell you that it's actually a Thanksgiving song. It wasn't even meant to be a Christmas song. He wrote this and said like this is a song for Thanksgiving. And I've heard people over the years have like the hot take of, we have all these Christmas songs, where are the Thanksgiving songs at? Well, it's Jingle Bells. Yeah. So we know about how Jingle Bells came to be, though. But let's get to Batman.
Okay.
There are 3 historical moments over the years that contributed to the creation of Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. The first one was the civil rights movement.
Oh man.
Yes. So if you're kind of doing your math here, in the 1850s was when Jingle Bells was written. So in the early 1900s, Jingle Bells starts to become more associated with Christmas, and it's a song that it's in a lot of households, and people like to sing this for fun. But with the civil rights movement, though, that was in the 1960s. But at this point, everyone knows Jingle Bells. And a common thing that you would do back in the day is, if you were trying to come up with a song, that you would use a song that already has the tune melody that you've already know, and you just change the lyrics. And this happened a ton during the civil rights movement, specifically on marches. So both sides of the movement had their own Jingle Bells parodies that had nothing to do with Jingle Bells, but they used that tune. And I'm not going to repeat any of the lyrics of those for good reason, but let's say they all involve violence towards the other side of the argument.
Sure.
Yes. So in the early 60s at this point, people have established that Jingle Bells is kind of a blank canvas that you can paint your own word picture on.
Okay.
And Batman debuted in 1938. So
I actually didn't realize it was that old.
yeah, he was like right before, kind of like when Europe was starting to break out into World War II, but it hadn't came to America yet. But yeah, 1966 is when the Batman TV show starts. And the show was popular, but no one really could agree if it was good. Have you seen any of the old Batman TV shows?
No, but I think I've heard jokes about like the ridiculous things they said.
Yes. So when we think about modern Batman, like regardless of who your favorite Batman is, that like the more recent of a Batman thing that you watch, animated or live action, the more serious it is. That like we think of Batman as he's dark, he's brooding,
Right.
He's still getting over the issues with his dead parents.
Right. Like the Christopher Nolan type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that seems to be a trend that's continuing for the most part, that like Batman's not too funny, he's pretty serious. And about every decade that you go back in time, he gets goofier and goofier. Like when I watched the 1989 Michael Keaton Batman when I was in college, and the most recent Batman movie to have come out at that point was The Dark Knight. So a couple of my
Right.
friends and I watched this movie, and it's like a weird joke. And,
Yeah.
and we were like, wow, this is not what we were expecting at all. And the 1966 Batman was known for not being reviewed well because it was so over the top. It was just like so trying hard to be campy and kind of corny. Like there's a lot of words for this sort of thing, that it was not getting very good reviews. And some people had negative things to say about Batman. And in a newspaper in San Diego in the 1960s, someone wrote in to their local newspaper to say, Batman smells. And this is our first piece of evidence of the phrase Batman smells.
Batman smells.
And at some point, we don't know the exact moment, but some sort of child heard the phrase Batman smells and realized that it rhymed with Jingle Bells, and it got into the playgrounds. Our second historical moment that helped out with Jingle Bells, Batman Smells was the Vietnam War.
Oh my gosh.
So in San Diego, there was enough of like a military base presence that you have a bunch of military families. So if mid to late 60s is when Jingle Bells, Batman Smells is coming into existence, Batman is becoming even more popular with the show, that with the Vietnam War happening, all of these families who have children on playgrounds in San Diego all have to move to different places in the country and the world.
Yeah.
So they all learn this silly song on the playground, and now they're getting shipped everywhere. And they are spreading the good news about Jingle Bells, Batman Smells.
Organic marketing for Jingle Bells, Batman Smells.
And I was talking to my dad about this, and because I've been talking to a lot of family members recently and saying, well, when was the first time that you heard this song? What were the lyrics? And so on and so on. And my dad said, yeah, I think I remember I learned it when I lived in Cardington, which would have been like 4th through 6th grade roughly. And I was looking at the time period on this, and it was the mid to late 60s. And it was like so fascinating that very soon after this started to spread, that like he learned the same thing that I learned. And he told me that in 4th grade, he even wrote a Batman themed poem. So the idea of how can I create my own pop culture about Batman was just a very commonplace thing. So like he's already writing his own poem. So it's not that crazy to imagine kids are going to write a song about him. But it gets even more popular with our final historical event, the premiere of The Simpsons.
Okay.
Have you watched much of The Simpsons?
Not at all, actually.
Yeah, I had not watched The Simpsons until about 2 years ago.
Okay.
I came very late to the game. Surprised how well it holds up for the most part. I mean, there were a few things that I would watch and say that it feels weird, specifically seeing a version of Queen Elizabeth with hair that's not white. She had like grayish hair in one of the shots, and I thought that's not my queen.
Right.
But it turns out that the first episode of The Simpsons, not like any of the pilots, apparently it started off as like a skit on a different show, but like the first, like season 1, episode 1 of The Simpsons is at Christmas time. And within the first 2 minutes of that episode, Bart is on stage singing at his his Christmas choir, and he starts singing Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. Specifically, his version is Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, Robin laid an egg. The Batmobile broke its wheel, and the Joker got away. And that moment is what kind of started to solidify what, especially in America, but even the world, what the lyrics of this song should be. But there are a lot of variants that I remember learning about.
Me too.
Yes. Well, what are some of the top
Well, the
of your
one
head?
that I specifically remember was that the Joker learned ballet.
Yes, and I take issue with that because that was something that came up on my playground as well. And I remember Daniel singing this song on the playground, and I thought like this is kind of dumb. It doesn't make sense from a narrative perspective. Like the Batmobile, like he loses the wheel, and like why is the Joker just doing ballet?
As soon as that wheel falls off, it's like, oh, I got to learn ballet.
Right, exactly. Yes,
the Joker got away. Also, the Joker, I almost said something stupid, so I'm going to just forget it. I almost said, in my mind, the Joker was Robin. And I was like, why would Robin run away? But it's the Joker running away.
But he's probably Robin.
Do they keep the Joker in the Batmobile? Is that something that has in the show? That happens in the show?
That he got inside of it?
Like, does he get apprehended and put in the Batmobile?
I don't know.
Why would the Joker be in the Batmobile?
I assumed it was a chase. So I assume that it is
I see.
Joker is running on
Makes more
foot or
sense.
some sort of machinery. Batman is in hot pursuit.
I'm picturing the Joker in the backseat of like a cop car, but the Batmobile, and then wheel falls off. And he's like, "Oh, I can run away." But
Right.
That's actually makes way less sense than him just like in a car chase and then he gets
Right.
away.
If I remember correctly from a lot of the Batman cartoons I watched, usually the police get involved after Batman catches Joker and they're apprehending him. So yes, as we can tell though, there's a lot of dispute on like what these lyrics really should be. And from my reading, I've got to give credit to Tom Scott. He's a popular YouTuber, and he was able to crowdsource a lot of data for me that I thought.
Wow.
So he did a survey. I think he got about 64,000 results.
Nice.
Where he was trying to learn about like how did you learn Jingle Bells Batman Smells? And everyone kind of agrees on that part. But then afterwards, it goes a lot of different directions. Like my dad, like I had never heard this one. He said Jingle Bells Batman Smells, Riddler's on his way. I've never even heard the Riddler mentioned in that, I think it kind of makes sense. Like,
is that a normal Batman villain?
Yeah, the Riddler.
Okay.
He's like Jim Carrey played him back in the 90s.
Okay.
He has like a bunch of green question marks everywhere.
I'm like relatively ignorant to like comic book stuff, so
Gotcha.
that's why I assumed that.
Sure. Yes. So it turns out though that some of it is. I mean, it's very geographical, but like the UK has their own branches where like a lot of their Jingle Bells Batman Smells lyrics have to do with like getting into accidents on the motorway because motorway is the term they use for their highways. Whereas that wouldn't make sense here. It wouldn't make much sense here because we call them interstates and highways and things like that. So I think one of the weirdest and most American versions that I found, like all of these have some amount of violence to them, but a few people wrote into this survey to say, Jingle Bells, Batman Smells, Robin laid a gun. Like, don't ask me how or why, really.
Yeah.
But there's a common thread of talking about something that happened in the year like 19 blank one, like 1981. So I think they needed the rhyme of Robin laid a gun.
Right.
Something happened in 1981.
That makes sense.
Right. But overall, I think my favorite thing that I've learned from this is just it's so fascinating to see how information spreads. Like it's very easy to think about how it spreads on the internet. It's much faster these days, but like to see this like guerrilla group of children be able to just pass word of mouth over time, take one thing that someone's parents said in a newspaper and turn it into like this own song that like we grew up in different states and like still have not heard someone who I told them. Like I asked them this question of when did you learn Jingle Bells Batman Smells? Everyone knows it. Nearly everyone found out in early grade school. And like,
it's like the original version of like something going viral before it had the ability to go viral. You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
That's just so interesting to think about.
Yeah. And
because now once it hits pop culture, like, you know what I mean? Everything we've talked about in this whole podcast, like eventually it hits pop culture and that's what takes it off. You know what I mean? Like it hits the media and so like, but that was even before it had before media would have had the ability to spread it like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. And yeah, I went back to my elementary. I went back to Apple Creek Elementary about a month ago. I was heading back to visit some of my family, and I made a little pit stop there because they're closing the school at the end of the year. They're building a new school. It's like 100 years old. Like they needed to do some sort of revamp. So I went back to the playground, and I was just looking around and kind of like thinking back to memories of like I remember when I jumped off that swing and I got stitches. I remember playing basketball games on these basketball courts, and I will always just remember the time that I learned Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. Thank you for listening to the Factoid podcast. And I also want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas at home. And we thought it would be fun to have a little Christmas gift to give out to somebody in our audience. And we are going to be giving away the Kagane that I bought. And I actually had it in a white elephant gift exchange, and I had to fight tooth and nail to get it back. And I'm so glad I got it back. So we're going to be giving away the Kagane and a piece of this fruitcake. I promise you it will still be edible, you can tell us how you think
You
it tastes.
won't get sick from
Yes.
eating it. You also don't have to eat it. You can put it on your wall or something.
Right, for sure. Yeah. So we thought it would be fun to give those away. And Chris, can you tell us a little bit about how
Yes,
we do that?
so we are going to have a form that you guys can fill out. All you got to do is give us your name, your email, and then it's going to be on a domain that we registered back when we started the podcast that we've never used before. So all you guys have to do is go to chrisandpayton.fun, okay? chrisandpayton.fun.
That is A-N-D, not an ampersand.
Yes, and Payton is spelled with an A,
Yes.
not an E.
Yes.
That took me a while to learn. So Chris and Payton with an A, chrisandpayton.fun. Okay, there's going to be a form. It'll be easy to fill out. We'll give you guys some time to fill that out. We might give it like a whole month, and then at the end of that month, we'll pick somebody at random, and we'll send you guys some a little bit late Christmas gifts.
Yeah, and I hope it really just warms up your Christmas season and that you can enjoy these dumb things that we enjoy too.
Yeah, it'll be a blast. Hey, as always, you guys can find us everywhere you find all your podcasts or at our website, factoidpodcast.com and chrisandpayton.fun.
We'll see you in 2 weeks.